I was wondering.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started, folks. So, welcome everyone to the Region 7 Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting. It's Thursday, May 25th, and we're gonna talk about all our issues in Region 7 related to planning and zoning. I start these meetings by reminding everyone the role of SAC as outlined in the charter is to play a key supporting and collaborative role by providing input and assistance in examining community challenges and opportunities related to land use, preparation of goals and strategies to implement a regional vision, and recommending changes in zoning. So that's our task. If we can all try and remember to keep that in mind as we go through our discussions, and it'll help us stay on target. So with that, we'll call to order, and I'm going to ask if there are any announcements. We'll start with Patrick on.
The main announcement, I was going to wait till the end, but the comprehensive zoning public review tool is still out and open and available for public comments. That will be available until June 1st. So please get your comments in there. And I think that's the only announcement that I had at this point.
Okay, and we'll cover upcoming meetings and the remainder of our agenda items at the end when we talk about next step, right, Patrick?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's move into public comments. I'm going to remind our speakers that they're limited to 2 minutes each, and if they want to offer written testimony of any length is submitted to region7@aacounty.org. So let's see if we can find out if anyone with us today from the audience would like to offer side. We'll just go around the whole room. Okay. I'm going to remind everybody, look, we hear what you say. We're taking into account if you've spoken before, please do not repeat what you talked about last time. It's already in the record. If you have new information to share, we're welcome to have you join us and share it with us. So please tell us your name, and then if you don't mind, stand up and tell us what you have to say.
Thank you very much. My name is John Lagataria. I live at Sleepy Hollow Lane in the Livermore community. I just did a little bit of math, and I understand this isn't quite Livermore, but it's 4.2 miles from my home. And I grant you it's Thursday night. Traffic is bad. It took 26 minutes. That average is about 6 miles an hour to get from here to there. So needless to say, the traffic is very, very bad, troubling already. And we're talking about a tremendous expansion to that. So that's point number one. Number two, more localized within our community. I'm very much concerned. We have a cove and we have boats and such, and we have the privilege of having that. I've seen the silt amount rise dramatically in the 7 years that I've lived there. A lot of that is runoff, of course, and we're doing a lot of things to mitigate that. My concern is that if Bestgate Road is developed further, then that will be accelerated tremendously. And that is already a problem. We have to dredge. We have permission to do that, and we will, but it has a tremendous toll on the ecosystem in our cove. And that I think is quite dramatic. And I can't see any way. I know that when development happens and you put the hay bales down and all of that, it's supposed to mitigate everything. But let's be real, it doesn't really always super effective. I've seen it where it's not effective. I've seen it where they're washed away, etc. So that's my biggest concern.
Understood. Thank you. All right. You realize it's graduation week at the academy too. I think everybody here has like 40 minutes to get here. So next week will be better.
I'm not better.
We're not sure. Go ahead.
We're going this way. Hi, my name is Steve Hammond. I reside at 521 Wilson Road. And yeah, Region 7. Just speaking in favor of the county keeping this area zone residential, the properties that are still residential, and not to approve any further commercial encroachment on our area. Many of us as property owners, we have a dream too of having retired or retiring to this, what I call it, semi-rural kind of area. We've had the encroachment of the churches and the commercial properties that are there currently, but I'd like to see it remain the residential atmosphere that it is now. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ross Heisman, I live at 1904 Sleepy Hollow Lane, also in the Lindenmore community. I took the time to look at Plan 2040 this morning before, just to look at it again, just to see what it says. And the number one statement there is to protect the natural environment. The second thing that they mentioned was promoting healthy communities. They talked about common concerns of the residents. And the number one common concern was traffic congestion. Surprise, surprise. We're talking about some parcels on Ridgely Avenue that are looking to be changed from residential or small business to commercial use. There were 3 properties on Ridgely Avenue. It appears, or I have heard from a lot of discussion, that Ted Krause and Landmark Properties are looking far more than Ridgely Avenue, that they are blazing their way down to Bois, which is behind Ridgely Avenue, trying to strong arm existing residents to sell their properties. He's acquired another property since the meeting in February. And he presented himself in February as offering opportunities to the community and the neighborhood. He was looking for something small with retail on the ground floor and apartments above it. That's not his end game. His end game is to ram some large scale commercial development between Ridgely and Dubois, because he's going for C2 zoning now, and he's trying to cobble together as many properties as possible. He is not.
I'm going to stop you there.
Go ahead. Stop him.
I don't.
You know him well. You were sitting with him at the February meeting.
I don't think you have the right to assume that you know what someone's doing. And I don't think it's proper to do that in a public forum. So I'm gonna have to move past that comment and get to whatever your comment.
Okay, it should remain residential or small business. There is inadequate public facilities in that area right now. It's all septic. There's no existing sewer there. I think that anything large scale would tax it tremendously.
Thank you.
Named Gordon Rescar. I live at 1878 Lindmore Drive. In February, the meeting that was hosted by OPZ was supposed to determine what residents would find acceptable along the Ridgely corridor. That did not happen. That meeting was poorly conducted, and there was also a lot of concern raised from the audience, and it did not achieve that goal. So what we need is a path to find out what would be acceptable to the residents. I drove here along Admiral Cochrane and Riva and saw some of those enormous developments. Those are what we don't want. For the reasons others have stated, including specifically the environmental problems, but also the traffic. Now, several people have expressed to me, and I've heard this talk, but I'm just representing myself, that these properties along Ridgely might be a place where you can put the missing middle. We've talked about the missing middle, multifamily dwellings of modest size that don't create huge increases in impermeable surfaces and that sort of thing. But given that the county has not yet determined existing residents' preferences, a process to reach out that is properly managed is called for. And the GIS application is not the answer. There's an ominous statement in the training video for that thing. No comments will be accepted if they're not placed in that app. It is the opposite of user-friendly, but a process to find residences, acceptable zone would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Stacia Ressler with the Lindenmore Group, and I want to address specifically the request for waivers that are appearing on the map for an entire block on Ridgely. Mr. Krause did have a meeting that was reported back to us with the local residents where he encouraged everyone to apply together for commercial zoning under the premise that it would make their properties more valuable. So the developers want us to believe that there will be no environmental impact because the area requested for waiver is on the west side of Ridgely. But we have videos during a strong rain that shows the water running across Ridgely and draining on the east side down to Cove Court. Because Ridgely is a high area that drains into the surrounding waterways, no commercial zoning should be allowed unless the county first does a full environmental review. But really, this area should just be instead added to the critical zone because of its significant impact on surrounding waterways. The commercial zoning allows up to 80% impervious area, whereas R2 is only 15%. So if it became commercial, this would increase the runoff and the environmental impact as well. Our neighborhood is already well aware of and experiencing these impacts, as others have explained to you, because of the cost of siltation and dredging to remediate code report, which currently Lindemore homeowners bear ourselves to keep the code navigable. If the county persists in approving commercial zoning for that area, then the cost of that dredging should either be passed to developers or borne by the county. And we in Lindemore would like to discuss that with the county. I will be sending a copy of these comments to the county in writing, so that future action is necessary to address this siltation. These comments are well documented.
I am Dave Porter, also live in Lindemore, represent the Lindemore Community Association, and had the opportunity to talk to many others in the Grizzly Corridor. I feel like I have a good sense of what the community wishes are. I think you at this point have a good sense of what the community wishes are as well. So I'm not going to repeat all of those now. I do want to draw attention. I did send a fairly long written testimony. I hope you all have had a chance to see that. I'm not going to go through any of that anymore. Also included in that, in addition to what we don't want, is talking about how do we find what we do want. That's the important point. The one thing that has happened is has already been talked about since then, is that Ted Krause had this meeting where he was trying to coerce neighbors. I spoke to some of those neighbors. I know the content, some of the content of that meeting. He does have plans, even though we don't have to suppose those things, of what he's going to do with that property. And I think that's a very difficult thing for us to accept. That's why there's a lot of alarm. Personally, I'm actually optimistic. I'm optimistic because as Lawrence has done, I've read Plan 2040, and I understand what the principles outlined in Plan 2040 are. I've read the charter for this group. I thank you for highlighting again. The commitment of this group is to honor those principles. So I think in that case, it's kind of a no-brainer, and I hope that that's what happens. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Owen Smith. This is my 3-year-old's line. He sent it with me, so he didn't have to be here. And it also represents an obligation I have outside of this meeting. And I appreciate you guys starting early to accommodate the public interest, but also all the volunteer time that you do. You have to show up to meetings when you don't have an immediate interest, in addition to the one. So thank you very much for your time. I want to say just quickly, again, I think David hit really good points. I mean, the initial zoning was rejected before this. It said it should go to this process. And I appreciate that so far the draft had both listened to the community and the plan and gone with that. I know that substantial pressure exists on other people in the city to make some changes and do other things. But again, I want to really commend that. I'm a little nervous here. I do want to say that, you know, this is also an opportunity for those stakeholders who we are having beefs with to show up and speak their truth. And I don't think that has happened in the way that we feel is constructed to. David Krause could be here today and tell us exactly what he wants and put either a lot of our distrust at ease or inform this meeting and inform the committee itself a lot of things. That's personally something that makes me very uncomfortable. Also, the existence of paid lobbyists here. I know that the Hives are both registered lobbyists on behalf of both Queens Creek and Ridgely and Krause. And I don't know, Sager Williams was here and spoke on behalf of some developers, but he is not a registered lobbyist in the county. And I don't know if that's the case. You need to be in case of a public meeting, but the last one I attended in person that happened. So in general, I mean, my feeling is that more transparency would benefit everybody. I really love your existing decisions and I support this is a challenging process for that. But as stakeholders and representing stakeholders who are here and are going to be in this community for a long time, I urge you to reject the request to make a denser commercial zone in this area. As far as I can tell, all the people who live in are very lovely and are also a little bit scared and intimidated because they've got a lot of power being put down on by particular interests in this community that are used to that, and they're not. Thank you.
I'm Poundstorm. We don't live in Lindemore. We live in Queens Creek Medical Center, and I know that you all know that. We've had quite a few people submit comments that that piece of property that was changed from R2C2 to just C2 because it's owned by the medical center.
I'm probably hear you down here. Could you just speak a little louder, please?
Sorry, these are people tell me.
You can eat your answer.
Sorry. Okay, we live behind the Queens Creek Medical Center. And that piece of property, the L-shaped, the arm, that used to be on R2C2 was somewhere in the process because the medical center owns that all being to be C2. So when we talked about it, with some powers in here, they said, probably if you wanted to go back to R2C2, it would prevent it from being developed by the medical center as commercial. If it remains C2, then potentially the medical center could build more office buildings directly next to where we live. There's 3 properties. There's my house, there's the Adamant's house, and there's an empty lot. There's kind of a cart for the horse thing here, because if it does not go back to R2C2, then we're gonna be stuck in the middle of commercial. And I don't wanna be stuck in the middle of commercial, but I couldn't file for commercial rezoning because it's like, that would be later after someone approves C2. So we're kind of stuck in the middle. So what we're asking for is that it definitely goes back to R2C2 so that nothing can be built on that arm that the medical center owns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead. Did you want to speak?
He's already standing up. Hi, Julie Johnson, I live over in Arundel. I've been really agitated, like apparently a number of you also have been agitated. So I made a lot of phone calls. I learned a lot about the sewage and the water situation. The county has capacity for 13 million gallons of water today. Our current consumption or use is 8.5 million gallons per day. And so it's, oh, we're in that city, we're good, and they'll live that, no problem. So that's fine, except, you know, if anybody follows along with this new thing as well as the county council seems to have passed, that if you own property, you can expand it by putting on one more dwelling unit. Well, if only half of other people put in, you know, another dwelling unit, I'm hearing half of 8.5 is 4.25. 4.25 is 8.5 is 12 3/4. That's awful close to 13 million gallons per day, and that doesn't count what anybody else is adding there. So I ask that you consider keeping this sewage problem or dispute, sewage treatment, you know, wastewater is natural, but we don't say well, that doesn't sound adult. So another problem is, you mentioned pit traps, but I was looking at who is along, you know, who owns the properties along Ridgely Avenue. And it turns out there are a lot of people who have had some experience with building and developing things. And so at the Twin Creek Medical Center, there's the AAU partners, and there's another one. And then when you get down to Ridgely Oaks, the Epsteins own, the Epsteins and the Max own a significant fraction. These buildings have been there a while, maybe they've amortized their mortgages and they're ready for new turf. And then,
Sorry, you're right at 2 minutes now.
You want to try and wrap it up for us so we can move on?
Okay, most important thing that is left, I'm sorry, okay. Most important thing that's on the left is that a lot of people have recognized the history of the Anne Arundel County approving new commercial development is they're overly optimistic. They go, oh yeah, we need more, you know, commercial because that's jobs and money and revenue.
Need you to summarize.
Well, and the point of that is that year, you know, time and again, they fail. And so then you're left with leftovers like Marley Station Mall, you know, parole failed. And it was, you know, a mess for 10 years before they go.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you there because we need more
Thank
time,
you.
but you're welcome to write in any comments you want to add to the records to us, and that would be fine.
Thank you for this proposal.
That's why I want you to write it down.
Fine.
That's the beauty of it, because then it can be recorded so we won't lose it. Thank you.
Which side of it? My name is Judy Weigel and I live on Willow Grove, which used to be a hot item like a Du Bois is now a hot item for picking up properties in what I consider the Ridgely Avenue corridor, not just the little, you know, 2-block strip. I'm same as Pam, going to be surrounded by commercial. I can't go commercial. My property is too small, whatever. I don't want to go commercial. When I moved here, it was R15 zoning for that whole area.
Ridgely Oaks, I believe, got in under the R15 zoning and then sort of marching from there, slip slide into a bigger thing here. There's a lot of stuff going on, even as we speak, properties are being bought and sold in Ridgely Avenue corridor. So there's a lot of pressure on people who live there to get out, take this cash offer, this best deal. And it simply should not be allowed. Should the county went R15, nope, you're gonna be R2, and that's how I'd like to keep it. For some kind of quality of life for all of us, including little one.
Thank you.
You want to make any?
Is that everyone from the public who'd like to speak this evening?
We might want to check virtually. and
Someone
see
does
if-
have their hand raised.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh,
Mr. Belt, bear with us, we're gonna try and get you up there.
I'm here.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think the participant I need to allow them to talk. Okay, Arnold Preservation Council.
So my name is Elizabeth Rossport, and I'm trying to get that off of there, but anyway, my name is Elizabeth Rossport, and I live at 24/7 Way in Arnold, Maryland. I have had a little experience with all this, been 6 years through the planning process, and I want to thank you all for volunteering. It is very difficult, and Mr. Wilson has served just as long as I have, I think. And so I appreciate all the time that you all have put into this. And I hope you're doing your homework because there's a lot to be learned. There's a difference between your planned land use for this area, which is residential low density. You have your development policy overlays, which is neighborhood preservation. And that is defined as primarily limiting new development. Then you have your zoning, and you're looking at doing a village overlay. And I want to point out that in accordance with state land use articles, the zoning map must be consistent with the land use map. Your land use map for this area is residential low density. As I mentioned, I live in Arnold, and if you are familiar with Route 2, Arnold Station is a village center. There's not very many of them in Anne Arundel County. And so, for example, in the village center, we have a Safeway, we have a CVS, we have a post office, we have a strip shopping center, and we have a proposed new Chick-fil-A. So be careful and make sure you do your homework. The staff at Planning and Zoning is awesome. If you have any questions, I highly ask you to write in and to do that. They are the experts. We are the volunteers, and they know their business. But be careful because you can't go back. And I hope you will do your homework. I thank you for your dedication and your volunteerism, and I wish you the best of luck. Thanks.
Thank you. Does that conclude our public comment? Troy's on the committee. Yes.
I don't see any other hands raised, so.
Okay, great, thanks. So we're gonna go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting. And thank again, everyone who decided to provide comment, and remind them that if they want to add additional comments, go ahead and write it in, or put it in the record. Probably the best thing to do to make sure that it's not missed.
Even though it's not on the map.
You can provide it through the interim account. We'll get it on there. So we'll move into old business. And old business is approval of the prior meeting notes. Now, I've had some discussion between the last meeting and this meeting with some people who had some concerns about a couple of things in the way they were covered in the meeting. Unfortunately, I don't believe everyone is prepared to offer the adjustments this evening. So how difficult would it be, I wonder, to postpone except approval of the minutes until the next meeting? Is that all right thing to do?
That's fine.
Great, great. So I'd like to propose that we postpone approval of minutes, a decision on that until the next meeting. We can take a vote. Everyone in favor of that? We're going to carry that through as constructed. Okay. And any other old business?
The only other thing I was gonna mention, that I mentioned earlier that our, comprehensive zoning tool is open until June 1st. I didn't have my notes up, here in front of me, but I was gonna just briefly give an overview. We've gotten 3 comprehensive zoning applications in the region to date. I do expect that there will be a few more. That's way fewer than the other regions, particularly region 4. I think they're around 40 or so at this point. Okay, maybe so.
They got more today.
We did have 2 drop-in sessions on the 10th and the 15th for people who either wanted to look at the hard copies of the zoning maps and or wanted help inserting comments or even help talking through how to file an application for a zoning change. We didn't get anybody interested in the latter during those drop-in meetings, but we did have about 18 or 19 attendees at each of those. And outside of that, we've had several callers with their individual questions that we've taken just by phone and by Zoom and such. The public review tool, you can read the comments that are being submitted online yourselves. We do have a concentration of comments around the Bay Ridge area and then also around the Ridgely area. And then miscellaneous comments kind of scattered throughout the region elsewhere. We will be reading all of the comments that are submitted, so keep them coming.
Patrick, I thought you had mentioned earlier that there were a couple of zoning change requests along Bestgate too. Was that what you were talking about earlier? There's only 5 so far?
There are 3 so far, yeah. 1 in Bay Ridge, and there are 2 along the Ridgely Avenue area at this point.
Just
So we haven't received, there may be others coming, but
Right, okay.
that's where we're at right
And
now.
the deadline for those is when again? June 1st, okay. And there was instructions on the website about how to do that application.
It's within that same, it's a separate tab within that same review.
Right, okay.
Do you have a count on how many comments have come
Comments?
in? It's really hard
It's
to.
not an easy way. I don't
Okay.
have back end
Okay, I
access
was just
to
wondering because
count that up easily. It looked like, I don't know, 100 or so. It was a
Okay.
lot of comments.
okay. I will say, it's been a difficult process explaining to my neighborhood how to use that online comments. We've had a YouTube tutorial. We did a comprehensive spreadsheet of the implications of what was being asked and zoned. And then we also have like a 6-page instruction sheet that has every screenshot that they need to see with a link for the comments. So I was wondering how we were doing with getting comments through. So it's been a process, and there's a lot of concern that comments, I think the comment was made earlier that there is a note that there will not be any comments accepted unless they're put into the portal. And that concerned a lot of people that were just having difficulty, but I think we're getting through it. We've sent out a second class to the neighborhood of how to do it.
Well, yeah, and in truth, I mean, we do have the region 7 at aacounty.org email, and we've gotten comments that we've been logging there. I think from our standpoint, it's easier to process these comments that are specific to the zoning map and the draft zoning map. If we can have them in one place,
Okay,
it's, you know, that's what the tool is intended for.
sure. I just think that has frustrated some folks and they might possibly think they have no other way to communicate.
There's
But what
always
you're
the-
saying is there are other ways.
There is the email that's
And we
always available.
did have Lisa Rodby, who's our county council member, come out. We had a meeting about the zoning. And she said that in the end, she would take comments and bring them herself if people felt there was no other way to be
Well,
heard.
they can email them right in.
Well, okay, but that's not clear in the instructions on the map. It
Perhaps
makes
you can
it,
let the people who are.
well, I
concerned
will, but
that's how they can
I'm
get
just
it.
telling you what's written. It'd be nice if you could revise that because that has been a concern that's been brought to me.
If you'd emailed us earlier, we would have revised it earlier. I mean, we'll get it
I thought that's
revised.
what you wanted to do, so I didn't know that you were accepting them other ways. I honestly was following rules too, so.
We thought the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand.
So now
I
it's
made the
good to
comment
hear.
As well, we were talking about something else similar for taking comment, and I was like, you cannot tell the public, we're only gonna accept the comments one way. I mean, if you come to a drop-in session and you give us comments, if you email the Region 7 address, you have to take the comments. So I'm old school. I've been doing this a long time, so. we
Well,
didn't
this
even
is
have
my
these
first
tools. We
rodeo,
didn't
so
even
I
have
didn't
these
know.
tools When I got into planning, we only had a letter that went in the mail, that came in hard copy, so, yeah. And the other thing is, everybody that speaks at this meeting, I mean, staff is here, we're taking notes, we hear everything you say at every meeting. It's all being taken into account.
So I'll remind everyone again, if you have trouble using the system, you can write into region7@aacounty.org, or you can mail it. But, email is starting to take this down, right? So, we do appreciate it. But not always easy. Sometimes it sounds a little bit redundant, and sometimes it's pointed, and sometimes it's off base, but we'll take it all. And I'm trying to just sort through it. So, and you can share that with all of the people that you talk to. If they're having trouble doing it through the regular mechanism, that's the way to do it.
Put that as a note you put on the website.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. That's the end of old business, I believe. Anything else on old business?
I don't have any more.
Okay, so let's move into our SAC discussion. This is supposed to be the meat of our meeting. We're not doing too poorly on our time here. The first discussion is about the potential village center overlay. So let's talk about that.
So I sent to you all, at our last meeting, we talked about exploring the option of designating a village center over a portion of the Ridgely Avenue area that would allow for really a more detailed master planning effort that could then define a tailored vision for that area that protects the area while accommodating and kind of defining how any change that may occur would be guided. And so we've shared that some draft language with you all that I wanted to kind of go over really quickly. I'm not gonna sit here and read it to you because I believe you all will have read that before we got here, but just, you know, for the record, the draft language that this is drafted as it may be, it could be inserted into the region plan as a recommendation for the Ridgely Avenue area. And that's assuming, that's if we, you know, agree that this is what should happen. And then the language would then go out with the draft plan for public review and comment at that point. But this draft piece that I've given you, it starts with kind of a broad description of the existing conditions in the area, overview of the change request from Plan 2040. Those are the things that kind of triggered a closer look at the Ridgely Avenue area. We would probably add language if there, well, regarding the comprehensive zoning applications, we do have a couple already. We probably are going to have some more, so it might add some language, you know, to describe that. But the blurb then goes on to describe what a village center is as it is defined by Plan 2040, and that is that it's a pedestrian-oriented mixed-use area that's compatible with and oriented to the surrounding community. And then there's a sector plan that's really developed for that area that is done in engagement with the community. The description that I gave you then defines the key elements or really the scope of that planning effort, and notes that the planning effort needs to outline the elements that need to be preserved. What are the environmental concerns of the area? What are the other key needs of the area, whether it's mobility, other forms of transportation, utility concerns, and then prioritizing means of meeting those needs, and then development standards that are tailored to the area. The description, it identifies a potential area that's defined as the village center, and if you'll advance to the next slide, the area in red is potentially that that village center kind of focus area. It encompasses the commercial areas on the east side of Route 50, around Heroes Pub and the antique shop, and then down to the north, Ridgely to toward Wilson Road. So that's kind of that main commercial area as it exists currently. It encompasses all of the small business and C1 areas. But then it also identifies a wider, what I'm calling a study area that is important to take into account. And that's that area that's outlined in blue. Just making sure that you're accounting for that full context and how whatever is proposed for the village center impacts that wider area. And then it tries to sort of wrap up with a set of kind of a current set of values that would guide any activity in the interim. So in the interim between if this is adopted into the region plan, and in the interim before a village sector plan is actually completed and adopted, what are the kinds?
Can you repeat again what the blue are?
The blue is the wider, the red is the village center defined area, and that we can talk about that, we can adjust. The blue area would be, just ensuring that the context is taken into account. So ensuring that the village center and the impact on that wider area.
Hacker, could you point out to people where Cove of Cork is on that map, just so everybody can relate Cove of Cork to the proposed village center?
But yeah, this is
We all live off of Cove of Cork.
this is Route 50. And so here, this is the Wilson Road here, Ridgely Avenue. So we've got this is the area that we're talking about in red. So we've got Weems Creek and Ridgely Avenue are the two.
Yeah.
The two
Just for the
central
benefit
areas.
of our
Yeah,
committee.
not to interrupt, but this is Cove of Cork.
Right.
And most of us that live in this neighborhood. And Cove of Cork, the headwaters are right here. I mean, it drains directly from Ridgely Avenue into Cove of Cork, right?
Understood.
This is a ravine. This is a ravine right here.
Perfect.
So the water starts
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect.
So the text wraps up with kind of a set of values that would help guide any activity that happens, but in the interim between when the region plan is developed and the sector plan would be developed. And so it talks about protecting neighborhood scale, protecting tree canopy, the open landscape, and environmental resources. And it's kind of broad language to help preserve the historic structures in the area and the features that actually make them historic. And then just making sure that any new structures that are built in that time frame are integrated into the fabric of that community. And it closes with there are a few images that illustrate some of the principles that the text tries to mention. And so, certainly open to better images that may illustrate that sort of thing.
I have one more question.
So,
Is it city
sure.
line? Is it West Annapolis?
The city line is further.
So West Annapolis is not city.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. Right here.
Squeaky Creek.
Yeah.
It's on it.
So Patrick, I just want to be clear because I'm not sure that everyone is aware of how this would work if it were to move forward. I think this is in response to input from the community coupled with a desire to look for ways to improve that area of Region 7. And so rather than make a recommendation to change the zoning in that area, the recommendation is to study this area and see if we can do an overlay, a village center overlay. And that process starts with the pieces that are outlined in the first page of the slide that you showed that had the kind of early steps to go through it, which was basically there's a study period, there's an evaluation of natural characteristics, there's an evaluation of kind of the building patterns and the use patterns that are there. And that's all taken into account to develop a town center plan that would be.
Town center.
I'm sorry, village center.
Yeah.
That would be an overlay on this. And that goes through a public comment period. There's input from the community and all that along the way. Am I describing that correctly? Okay.
Yes.
Are you guys hearing that?
Yeah, because on the village center, could you define that or elaborate more on what that is about? I think I heard you say residential and commercial.
And that was a term that was used by the city for a very different.
Okay, so I'm gonna, give me just a few minutes.
Okay.
So, as we go through this process and before we make our recommendations, Patrick, on what's gonna happen with this, would a draft of this document be posted on the Region 7 site?
It would go out with the preliminary draft of the region plan.
Right.
And would be, available.
So just to clarify for one thing, so proposing a village center doesn't change this, we're not recommending any zoning changes with the recommendation of a village center proposals, correct?
Not at this time.
Correct. And this would also trigger another round of community input.
Correct, exactly.
Where the
This would be
community,
after the region plan is adopted, right?
Right. In other words, part of the recommendation would be to take a closer look at this area. And have another round of, another opportunity for the community to be more closely involved.
and if the community says we don't want a village center at that time, then it goes, what we're recommending, it's not set in stone, right? Like, we're recommending a village center, but it's based on community input at that.
Well, we would be recommending a village center.
Yeah.
And then we would be saying, but everyone's allowed to have a comment.
Yeah, I do have a comment. So there will be 3 official drafts of the region plan. One will be called a preliminary draft. That will be out later this summer. Then there will be a planning advisory board draft, which would be this fall. And then ultimately a county council draft. Okay, so when that draft hits the street, because the stakeholder advisory committee, hearing what the public has said about, it was a badly run meeting in February. You don't understand what we want. The response to that is potentially to do a village center. If you all do not like that, you will have opportunities to say, we don't want that. I mean, because
By you all, you're talking about the public, not
yes,
the
the public. The public has plenty of time to weigh in on this. Right now, the SAC is taking into account everything that they've heard from you. And this is how we would do an additional planning process, because we don't have time within the region planning process to do this village center plan. When the plan goes out for public review, you can comment on the boundaries, both the red and the blue. You can comment on what you think it should encompass. You could say, I totally disagree that we should ever do a village plan here. So that will be completely open for you. And just remember that what staff recommends in the preliminary draft, what the SAC recommends in the preliminary draft, it's recommendations. Nothing is set in stone until council adopts.
And this comes directly from our fellow committee members. I mean, the reason I'm leaning towards making the recommendations for village centers, because I think that we don't have the time or the capacity to hear all of the concerns and really address what the community needs and wants. So that's where I'm at right now, but I'm very curious to hear what the other community members have to say. Well, is it now the appropriate time for open discussion? Okay.
I have 3 comments real quickly. One, I like the concept of coming up with an area to study and to get more detailed input and having this kind of boundary concepts. I would really encourage our SAC group to recommend this for down at the end of Forest Drive, where the city is going to develop the Bay Ridge Shopping Center, because
That's not in the county.
well,
not in the county.
we have 3 city representatives. It is in the county. It is part of the county.
It's
And
not
it
under
impacts
jurisdiction, it's
our
out of
life.
the purview of
Well,
this
I'm just saying a multi-jurisdictional look, because the blue line that would impact a village center for Bay Ridge Shopping Center would extend into county properties and neighborhoods.
Let's stay focused.
Well,
on what's on the
I have
screen.
2 more comments. One is
If they're about this, they're gonna be great.
yeah, they are about this. That actually was about this concept. The first thing is, I don't agree with this because I have not heard one person from the residents ask for improvements to this neighborhood in terms of having commercial development. I didn't do that for applause, but I haven't heard it. I just haven't heard it.
We
So
have heard it.
my first question is why?
Excuse me.
No,
If
I
you
heard the
Continue to
improve.
talk, you'll be asked to leave.
Well, and I heard that this was to improve this area of Region 7, and I haven't heard the need to improve this. I have heard the residents say they want to keep their area residential.
Hey, wait,
Well, I don't know how you say that's unbelievable. Can I finish? Because that's just what I'm hearing, and I'm one of the committee members.
Yeah.
So let me go to the second part. This first part, where we talk about the history or the needs of a particular area, very important to me because I see this in different sections, and I always ask a lot of questions for data. And it's probably my failing because I'm an engineer. I always want to hear the data. I liked what she was talking about, usage and the increased density from ADUs and development. How does that impact usage of utilities? So when this little write-up is put here in preface to this village center need, and there should be a large discussion about environmental impact, and there really isn't. And we know a lot right now. We don't have to wait to study this any further. It's very clear the environmental impact that would happen trying to develop that section. And that should come out before this even gets started. So those are my 3 comments.
Absolutely, and I'd have to agree with some of your points.
That's great, and you too.
But what I'm just looking for clarification here. I thought at previous meetings, we have heard that there was a desire to improve the Ridgely Avenue corridor from community members. People talked about wanting to decrease traffic congestion, increase walkability. I mean, is that not?
Sidewalks, streetlights, storm.
Those have nothing to do with zoning into.
They
commercial.
certainly do.
Well, I don't agree. I designed a whole
So you can't
project
have
for
that
sidewalk
without-
improvement. No, that's not true. I designed a whole project, CIP project for the city of Annapolis to improve sidewalks. That had nothing to do with developers changing zonings. It's simply doing walkability studies, looking at safe routes to schools, and going after safety money through.
Did it happen?
Yes, it did happen. It happens
I don't
all
need
the
to
time.
beg you. I'm
There is a CIP program now. You act like.
Okay,
this.
okay.
But they do.
Let's all try and bring the town of the meeting.
Let me finish. I'm not trying to insult you. I legitimately, I've only been a resident of the Arundel County for 6 years, so I appreciate the additional
I was just
context.
talking about the city.
So,
Well, I've only been, I've only been a resident of Anne Arundel County for 6 years, so I'm looking for clarification. I don't want, I want you to make the charitable assumption that I'm coming to you with a
Oh,
curious mind. and heart,
well,
okay?
you did shut me down early and said that's not true, but I will be charitable about that.
was
You
probably
said that in the comments. All right, I'm sorry. Supposedly shouted at me at once, so I
I
probably.
apologize for shouting, that's not my
So
intention.
I'm a civil engineer by background. I've worked in public improvements. And there's many ways to get the needs that the residents want without changing zoning, without asking for developers' help. There's
Well, we're not
capital
changing
improvement
zoning,
programs.
village center.
No, but your point was, what did we hear before? I heard sidewalks, better lighting, walkability.
Yeah.
To me, as a public works engineer, those are all things that can be handled by the Public Works Department through CIP programs. It does not have to be done by allowing developers to come in, upzone and hope they're gonna do some larger improvements.
Okay,
So
great.
here's a question. I thought I remembered hearing concern that even in the present moment, that with the current zoning, that things can happen in any moment. Things have happened in the past.
So there is still development
There's
potential.
potential
today,
for
right.
properties that are residential now, maybe C1 now. There are some C1s, right? Am I crazy? There are some C1s in this area. It's been a while since I looked at it. Anyway, and things can happen. So this overlay was an opportunity to, as I remember it, again, we don't have our minutes, she's right. But my point would be that this overlay gave an opportunity to restrict, I mean, I'm using the word restrict, that might not be the right word, but put some limitations, some boundaries, some parameters on what could be allowed with any application that came in on any property here and now, or in the interim until it's adopted by.
We're not, this isn't an overlay proposal.
It's a village, isn't that what you call it? I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong words, forgive me.
Yeah, which does not
What's it
necessarily,
called?
the sector plan.
A sector plan. I thought it was a village overlay.
The village center overlay is not actually a zoning thing. It's part of the development policy area. So zoning is not changed now, but what it does is triggers a sector plan to be developed, like a master plan for that area. So that will come, zoning changes could come as part of that future
So my
sector plan.
question is, if I own a C1 property on Ridgely Avenue now, and I walk in with a permit to build, help me out, again, I'm not functioning as an architect anymore. They can, this wouldn't limit at all their,
Nothing until.
that wouldn't give them a
Future.
temporary boundary to
No.
work within decision-making and permits and zoning to.
No,
All right, I've
you-
misunderstood. I've
So,
taken all back.
I mean, so a C1
Forgive
property
me.
that comes in for a redevelopment today would have to meet all of the requirements of the C1 zone as they exist.
Today,
Today.
period. So anything can happen.
The region plan is as a policy document, and we review development proposals against these policy documents to say that, the development proposal is or is not consistent with the vision in these plans, but, and so there's that opportunity for us to comment and weigh in, and it's not as strong a review process though as the development review division and the zoning division that, review against the regulations as they are in the code. We're reviewing against a policy document.
I guess I misunderstood the purpose.
So let me ask, so there's two that are, two
I thought this limited things to two.
projects. Right.
Larry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, if I understood you correctly, there are two rezoning requests that are in now. If we agree that there's a village overlay, will that have any influence on those or not? Or
You all are going to review all of the zoning applications that come in. And the staff will make a recommendation first. You all are gonna look at each application and you will, either agree or disagree with, the OPC recommendation, and that's gonna be recorded, and it will go forward with the plan. Is that?
So it's part of reviewing that, it wouldn't matter if it's a village overlay or not. Does it add another level, maybe not necessarily legally, but in terms of intent of how you were thinking about the area? I don't know if I'm being clear on my question.
I think, I mean, it could happen both ways. Every comm zoning application request could be approved and a village center overlay done, or all comm zoning application requests denied, or some mix of that, and the village center overlay could be accommodated at once. I mean, the things work in tandem potentially, but I think it's for the committee to decide how, one, is the village center overlay something that is valuable as a potential thing for this area, and what should that look like?
Leo calling, I think you're calling. Go for it. I didn't know who was calling on us.
I'll call
You
it.
can probably sell it. So I read this differently than some of the people have commented so far. I think this sounds exactly like what this community is and what they're asking for. So unless I'm completely misreading this, you know, this is an area along Ridgely, right in that section in there, that's mixed use already. There are businesses and there are homes all along Ridgely. Am I right? Okay. And it says that this whole process of developing a sector plan for the area will allow for additional engagement with the community to tailor a vision for the next 20 years and enable a professional master plan analysis of the area's needs and opportunities. I mean, I think that's what we've been hearing people say. They want to have a voice in how their community works. They want to take the community as it is and enhance it, or, you know, leave it the same, but they want to have a voice in how this works. And I think this paper is really well written. You know, when I was reading it, I thought, oh, this is even more beautiful than that community as they define it. I mean, it has the potential to really meet everybody's needs.
So
And it would.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. Get ahead of myself.
What I really like about it, in addition to the fact that it seems to fit the community, is that it would allow us to take this whole Ridgely Avenue issue and put it aside and let the community work on it. And this committee can work on some of the other things that we have not had a chance to work on, because we've spent months now talking about Ridgely Avenue, and these lovely people can stay home and have dinner with their families and let us get some work done. But I mean, this is, if you read this is exactly what you're all saying you want, so.
So Leo, that's Lily's question though. So Lily, why, and again, this is not, I'm just looking for clarification. Why do you think a village center would work for Bay Ridge, but not for Ridgely Avenue? Like, what's the difference there?
Oh, well, so the very big difference is the city of Annapolis has already gone to Bay Ridge Shopping Center and said they're going to upzone it. That is in their draft master planning right now. And we know there's going to be, similar to that blue line, we know the impact of them putting that red line around the Bay Ridge Shopping Center is going to have an impact regionally, and it's going to impact the county neighborhoods around that. And we would like to have a cooperative. I understand there's that city and then everybody around it is county. What we would like to do is have a multi-jurisdictional review of what it is they're going to do. Now, village center is a very dangerous term, because in the city's terminology 4 years ago, in their Forest Drive sector study, they described village centers as 4 to 8 story mixed use development. But
That's not what this says.
I understand that. I'm just hoping you could come up with different terminology.
We're relying, can I speak?
So I'm just saying, that's very.
We're relying on terminology that's set by Plan 2040.
Yeah.
And I did pull it up, and I can actually read. This goes back to those development policy areas that we talked about in some of our previous meetings. And the village center overlay is meant to be, hold on, I just lost it. Existing or planned walkable, pedestrian oriented, mixed use areas that are suburban or rural in character, compatible with the underlying policy area, neighborhood preservation. In this case, and surrounding community. Development and redevelopment is oriented toward the community, enhances community heritage, and is implemented by a village sector plan. And then Plan 2040 goes on to talk about different types of village centers, and there are Main Street village centers and village, suburban neighborhood village centers, historic villages, and rural crossroads, which would not be Ridgely, village neighborhoods. So, you know, we could, if this is the direction to go, we could determine which of those like classes of village center this would be appropriate here and move forward, but.
Patrick, it's really a sector plan, right? That's how it starts. You have to go and do all of the steps. It's basically a whole nother process of community engagement that helps decide what's going to happen. And so the sector plan does a survey, environmental concerns, bicycle, pedestrian, traffic safety issues, utility, craft plans to meet identified needs, community-based vision. I mean, it does all these things. Now, Christina, how long does it take to do?
That's what I want to know. Is it worthless?
What everyone looks at me, it's probably gonna be
2-3 days?
18 months.
Right, right. So there's an 18-month.
Especially if it gets approved by the county council.
Right.
It will, and that's fast tracking it.
Yeah. So the reality is it's much longer than that.
So in the meantime, there's no handle on anything.
It stays as it is today.
And the other thing that I want to make very clear to everybody in the room, even if the village center gets recommended for Ridgely in this plan, those comprehensive zoning applications that have been filed still have to be acted on.
Sure.
Recommendation by staff, recommendation by the stakeholder advisory committee, ultimate decision county council. If everybody recommends no, the county council can still say yes. And so even if the village center goes in, it is not a governor. It doesn't potentially stop development or stop rezoning. So just, I just want to be very transparent about that.
Right. So I want to make sure you're hearing what's happening here because it's very important. Right.
And I just want to say
Oh,
that.
you just interrupted.
Oh,
So
I'm
I'm
so sorry. Okay.
I'll let you know when I'm done.
Okay, thanks.
So what we're saying to the community usually is that we hear what you're saying in terms of concerns about development patterns and things being forced upon you that you may or may not want, and concerns about environment. And so we're saying we don't have time to figure that out. And it sounds like there's a lot of concerns that need to be incorporated into whatever happens there. So we're saying, let's take the time to re-engage with the community, to get input from people who live and work there, and find out what the community character wants to be, what's important and what's not important. And then from that information, develop a new plan, village overlay possibly, make decisions together about what that's going to be, and then you can decide to either endorse that or take exception to it. But we're saying it's worth looking at. So there's two choices. Support the idea of looking at it or do nothing. If you do nothing, you can stay the same. You can continue down the path we're on today, or you can say, let's collectively decide to take a look at this thing and see if there's something we can do together to make it better. Is that a fair assessment of it? Okay.
When we first started talking about this and we said, let's work together to see what the community would accept, and we started talking about a village town center and it sounded appealing. Could you explain to us how the red lines were drawn? Because that doesn't look like a village center. It looks like the size of Parole Town Center and it's a little scary. And it includes places like Dubois that don't seem like they would be part of the village center. So could you explain that a little more to us?
This is new to us too. This is really new. So we're trying to determine what we would recommend. This is the first draft of it. So we're going to take a closer look at it as we already received it. So I'm going to say this maybe in a couple weeks. So we're going to look at that ourselves, but I just wanted you to understand the process to get to where we are today.
But there's something left out.
Hold on.
We let the
Yes, I want everyone to pay close attention to the different levels. We have an expert staff who worked very hard preparing this because that's their job. Then we had our committee. We had the community. When it gets to the point of whatever we recommend, and it goes to the county council, you need to be there. Be there for that. That's the final thing. So what you're saying tonight, this hasn't been heard. Go there, because they could get all this and still not do it. Okay? And I'm saying that from a governance standpoint, because I did that from a governance standpoint, 5 years on the school board. And I tell you, sometimes we took a recommendation, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we did a friendly amendment to things, but just understand something. Our word is not the final word. What the lady said right there is the final word. The county council, after we presented this to them, they'll now do diligence, and they may say something different or add something to it, because everyone has, Lisa's our record. I'm just District 30. Lisa's my, I want to say alderman, council person as well. But yes, right, Rodney. But you have other people on the council, different districts. The lady from Arnold spoke. She spoke from a level of experience of where she's going, but the final word is going to come from the county council. Be there when it gets to that point.
Thanks, Tom. I think it's a good point.
Knowing that's where my comment.
Okay, I'm gonna let you talk with Lily. I'm coming right back to you as soon as we're finished here. Go ahead.
Knowing that, and I've forgotten her name, we've met. Christina, what she said is that zoning changes are still moving forward and have to be addressed. And you know, if I was a developer, I wouldn't want to sit here for 18 months and wait for a village plan, this, that, and the other thing. So the fact that this process is put in place, it could be overcome by events when various zoning requests that we know are already in are being acted upon. So it sounds great, but the county council could approve those zoning changes long before the village thing is done.
But that's for the 3 spot zoned areas that are the 3 spot zone properties. People have requested changes for it. Spot zone is not the right word.
Well, we have a week left for open application, and it's
Understood.
like your college composition class. You're gonna wait till the night before and pull an all-nighter to get all your, I mean, I'm
It's more like
worried, right?
First thing.
We've gotten like 30 some in, but I'm worried the last week, we're gonna really get hammered,
Yeah, I
so.
understand that, but the difference is those are requests by individual property owners, and it's not this group saying we're gonna recommend zoning changes on your property.
Right.
Because what you're hearing from us is we're not doing that.
You're not doing that, but they're.
Yeah, the individual property owners are making requests to use their property as they choose. That's all right.
But we're asking.
Consistent with the zoning.
We keep asking you that, we're hoping that you're hearing us.
And we understand that too. You can always ask. The answer is no a lot of the time, right? So, okay, I'm gonna move away from the public. I'm sorry, I re-engaged the
Thank
public.
you. No, it's really helpful that you explained it to us.
So Lily, I know you have some more things you wanted to say.
No, I am confused because I think there's a misunderstanding that developing something like a village center overlay is magically going to improve infrastructure. And there are other ways. It's not yes or no. Just because you don't do that does not mean you can't improve the lighting and the safety and sidewalks and all of those community issues within an area. That is what your public works department does. That's what your environmental department does. There are many other departments within the county that have plans in place, have opportunities to get CIP projects for communities that have needs like this. This is not the way to get a lot of the comments that I've been hearing. So I apologize when I heard the needs that they were talking about from my experience, I heard public works initiatives. I did not hear zoning changes. So that's just the lens that I look and I hear those things from. And I just wanted them to know, the last time we talked to everybody, there are other departments in the county that can help you with a lot of your issues.
Right, so I hear what you're saying, and in response, I just want to say that one of the problems is infrastructure and things that have to do with public safety. The other problem is the disconnect between the uses on the properties along that avenue. So you've got a sprawling medical complex on one side, and you've got single family homes that have been converted to business on the other side. And you've got residences, and you've got churches, and you've got schools, and you've got all these things. And the question is, what does it want to be moving forward? What pattern does it want to follow? And I think a review like this says If we're gonna be something, let's decide together what it's going to be. Otherwise, we're gonna be more of the same, and that's part of the problem. That's what I heard. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I have a procedural question. So I apologize. I have to leave early this evening. Are we taking a vote on this, or are we trying to reach consensus? How do we move forward here? And if you have to move forward without me, that's fine. I just was curious before I leave it tonight.
Well, that's a great question. I don't feel we're in a position to take a vote on this tonight. I don't see it. I mean, I think there's a lot more that needs to be understood. The members of this committee are lay people, right? So we all have to get arms around this. So we're gonna have to do some homework with the help of Patrick and Desiree and Andrew to figure out like what we, as Patrick described, there's a couple different ones of these. We want to look at all of them and decide if there's one that's right or wrong. And so I don't think we're gonna take a vote on this tonight. I think we're gonna have to study it and come back and decide like what, as a group, I want to hear everyone's opinion about what they think, and then maybe we can put them all on the table and take a vote at the next meeting.
I have a really just a basic infrastructure question, since we've been flirting with the term. So if this village center were to, let's just say it ran the gamut and everything was approved. I'm assuming that there are still residential properties within that area, right? And so if the infrastructure is improved, like sidewalks put in and so on, typically the property owner is responsible for putting in the sidewalks rather than the county in most cases. Am I correct? That's been my experience. So in other words, if this is a village center and if the county council acts on it and so on, the county's not going to come in and put in the sidewalks and so on.
It's unlikely.
Yeah, typically sidewalks and such are put in when there's redevelopment of a property.
And typically also, if you're putting in like sewer lines and so on, the property owner usually has to bear some of that cost.
Yeah.
So if I were in this village center and I had a residence in this village center, would I end up having to pay for the sidewalk in front of my house? Would I end up having to pay for the sewer line that's going to service me in a grinder pump or whatever it might be? Those are some basic questions that I have with regard to how the village center would actually function from an infrastructure purpose.
I'm hearing two different things with the center and right in front of your house. And that, in the city of Annapolis, had to go about this. If your curbs are not deeded to the city, you're on your own. That's in the city. But if they're deeded to the jurisdiction that you live in, I understand the jurisdiction is responsible for the sidewalks, but it may be different in the county. Okay.
So maybe we could get that clarified.
It's working together, yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you a question. Am I missing the boat? Are we at the micro level or the macro level? Because I thought this was really the macro level, and I think we're getting to the micro level, because I thought that whole thing with the micro was what the community would decide. Am I wrong?
Right.
But we're still in a position of putting things together. When new questions come up,
But the question of sidewalks, infrastructure, any of that stuff would be what this community would decide for themselves. They might decide that they really want to put sidewalks in and say, okay, it's gonna cost everybody $15 a foot to put a sidewalk in. Do we want to do that or not? That's not for us as a committee.
that's right. Why isn't it for us? Because we have a
I don't think
administrative
we have.
role. Okay, we have a
Our
role.
goal is not to tell it.
But if the question comes up, it needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question came up.
But I'm
But
still
imagine-
asking what our function is.
Right. Well, I don't think it is to solve tertiary issues, things that are drilling down a little too far in my opinion. But I wonder what would happen if the community came up as a result of this process with a plan that said, this is what we agree we'd all like it to look like, and there was a diagram that showed what Ridgely Avenue wanted to be. Then I wonder if that would be a way to bring that forward to the county council and say, here's an opportunity to use our tax dollars to begin improvements here to spur change in this community. I wonder if that can happen. My guess is it could. And I think that's the way to do it. And that's the common ground I think that Lily and I share, is that there's a responsibility on the county side, but they need to know what to do, and this may help them know what to do.
I also think this is really the wrong forum to talk about this. I think you've had a special meeting about Ridgely. I think we need another special meeting where there can be dialogue with the community about what it is they want, what's the time frame, what's happening. This kind of,
I think
we're
that's the
talking
process
and
that
they're
we're trying
behind and.
Put into place here is to
Well,
set up.
You don't think we can't have one more give and take once you've
We
got
have an
this concept a little
extremely
further.
tight timeframe right now with our.
Frankly, I think this is the response to the need for another meeting, is to create a series of meetings. To get
Just
these
down the
answers from
road.
the community.
Take
It's
it
not-
off our plate.
It's not down the road.
Yeah,
We're
that's
recommending that they do it.
Fine.
Okay,
So
that's
there's
a little
not gonna be any.
I don't need to be condescending. I just get what you want to do. So
No, you think you get it, but you're not listening.
I am listening. You want to
I
have
think it's
more
healthy to move
detail.
on, probably. Have we talked enough about this project? About this?
Well, I think we're trying to understand conceptually. You introduced this idea of taking certain problems within different neighborhoods and creating this kind of process. And I think some of our questions are specific to the Ridgely Avenue Village Center, but there are a lot of comments, and I certainly some of mine, as to how this process fits into what we're doing as a committee, and could this apply somewhere else, and what those timeframes are. So I'm sorry we spent so much time on it, but I'm trying to understand both types.
I think what I envisioned with this was if there was a agreement from the committee to, yes, move forward with this proposal for a village center overlay, that it would be reflected in the development policy area map as a village center overlay over here. And then, you know, and we could have a conversation about other areas as well, noting that exactly what Leo said, the majority of that Bay Ridge area is in the city. So that one may come through more as maybe we need a strategy to develop, you know, with the city, or, you know, coordination with the city, something for, you know, similar for that area. That, you know, that's what I envisioned this, how I envisioned this going. So.
Yeah, and the other thing so let's say this moves forward and you hate the outline. It's too big, it's too small, it's too oddly shaped, it's whatever. You can tell us that. We can change it. If we get into the village center and we decide that the shape still isn't right, that village center process can change the shape of the outline. So but we can't discuss it if it doesn't go in.
That shape gets determined right there.
By planners who are trained in planning. It's a first cut.
Yeah, to be clear, yeah, this was the first cut at it, but it was to encompass the places that are already designated as commercial areas. So we've got the Antique Mall here, Heroes Pub here, and then extending up to North Bestgate Road, there's the C1 property that is for sale or has just been sold potentially on the corner there. And picking up the properties that are in between. This large jog out here, those are large properties.
And those are woods, and those are
They're
steep
woods.
slopes, and those are, so I think that line should, I mean, it's me speaking out my opinion. But I do wonder.
You think the line should shrink?
I think it should, now that we're looking at it,
Okay.
anyway, because there's a lot of woods that, you see the Cove of Court that our colleagues showed us. Then you see the creek bed, that actually comes across Ridgely. You know, the stream bed actually starts on the other side of Ridgely. When people drive through it on rainy days. So anyway, that's just a comment, a smaller comment.
Oh, it's helpful, it's helpful.
Third of Cove Fork is a flood. Only got water on a flood tide.
Where does that leave us, Patrick?
Well, I think you were feeling like we're not ready to take a vote. I guess I'm not sure I'm not sure what the next step is on this if we don't feel like we're ready to take a vote tonight.
What else?
Why aren't we
What else
ready?
is needed?
Yeah, what else? I mean, I agree. We can talk about this for months though, right? Yeah, we have talked about it for months. At this point, I think it's like.
We haven't, this is new, this is new language, I think
But we're running out of time, like, we have to provide a product.
Yeah, Leo, what else do you need to take?
Yeah, we don't see the critical overlays. That's-
Well, I was,
They're not up there.
candidly, I was hoping that we could,
It's not in-
Nothing's in the.
I don't know about the
Consensus.
best sides.
that's what I was hoping, that we could come to consensus. We may have it. I may.
Maybe we have it, maybe we don't.
Yeah,
You
we
can test for consensus.
Yeah, let's do a test. No.
You should the,
Test for consensus, see what you have, and if there's no consensus,
where you.
either somebody has an alternative proposal.
Yeah, or
I'm
whatever
looking
you use.
Or you go to our backup plan, which is.
It's on Pathwell Road. The
You
critical
said
area
along
is
the lines,
down on
you know,
Pathwell.
yeah,
Not up that.
Yeah, that's.
So, I mean, that's what I brought up. There are-
Okay, let's have one conversation. here.
That's a good
Let's
idea.
have one conversation.
Sorry.
My
So I'll
point
bring
is,
it back to that. And I'm gonna reverse something I just said. The gentleman in the green shirt asked to have a minute to say something. I'm gonna give him an opportunity. Ron?
get it, Ron.
Ron, I'm gonna ask you to say what you're gonna say. I'm sorry, I was short. I was just a little overwhelmed.
That's quite all right, but if you put a dot in the middle of that red section there, if you go a mile down Bestgate and a mile down Ridgely, you're surrounded by commercial living. We need more, really?
Good
That's all I,
point.
that's all I have to say.
Good point.
You know, we've got Growls, we've got the mall, we've got all of Annapolis Street. What else do we need?
We already have.
Nobody's complaining.
That's
There's
the
not
problem.
enough.
Thank you
We
for
already
the comment.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to the group here. So, let's do a little test for consensus. Who thinks that it's worth, moving forward with the recommendation that we propose a village center for this area? Thumbs up, thumbs up.
I'm recusing myself from voting.
but you're a resident of Ridgely Avenue, like, that's the whole purpose of you being here is to.
You're both, you should get two votes.
Well, I mean, I can even correct you, I just,
As long as they're,
I understand, yeah.
so,
I don't understand it.
okay, so who does not feel it's appropriate?
I still have a question. I don't.
Okay, so we have one no and a question. Let's go to the question.
So my question is this, are we voting on it as the outline currently exists or the concept?
I think we're voting on the concept and we're gonna take a closer look and we're gonna adjust it. Yeah.
Is that correct, after we're voting on the concept, the lines can be changed in the process?
That's what you say. you're voting on.
Yes. Voting on the concept.
Okay, one more question.
If we do this.
We have to get to our other.
Yeah,
topic.
what other topics do we? Yeah, I haven't looked.
This is our revised strategies, right? So. how
That's
much
why
more
we should
time do we need?
table this and take it up.
No, we have enough time. I want to
Yeah, you
finish.
guys can
Since
have
we're this
time.
quick.
I guess I still don't understand. I guess I'd like somebody to help me understand. The way, this doesn't offer any protection. It's a true false question. This process offers no protection in the 18 months.
I mean, the
And I mean, if something like this, here's my question, if this were adopted or recommended to be adopted, would these, I mean, the language that we have in this piece, does it guide any decision-making for any applications of any sort that come in?
it would guide the long-range planning staff review of development proposals. But we don't review for hard regulations that are in the code. We only review against Plan 24, against the region plan. And we, can make comments that, the proposal is or is not consistent.
To capture this question, until a village sector plan and tailored protocols are adopted, development and redevelopment along Ridgely Avenue needs to be maintained and enhance the community by protecting the local neighborhood scale, protecting the existing tree canopy, minimizing paved areas, preserving existing historic, integrating any new buildings into the historic area by limiting height and everything. So is that, I guess the question is we may not have any big heat, but does it have any influence in terms and this intervening period of time?
So if this language were in a region plan right now that I'm reviewing and say Ridgely Oaks comes in as a new construction as you see it, I would look at that and I would say that that development is not consistent with the region plan. And I would point to language like this and then make some
So there might be.
suggestions for tweaks.
So there
But-
might be
but
some
the-
influence.
But the tough thing would be that, you know, there's under C2 and, you know, if zoning regulations allow for whatever they have, then there is that.
The largest implementation tool for any plan, whether it's Plan 2040, a region plan, it is the underlying zoning,
Yes.
which controls what you can do on a piece of property. And so even if it's not wholly consistent with what is in the master plan, if it complies with the underlying zoning, generally it can happen.
Thank you.
So.
Thanks for answering. I appreciate
So
everybody's.
that's zoning, but what about proposed zoning changes?
I've been told by so
It
many.
ends up being up to the council. Remember a couple meetings ago, I told you that with Plan 2040, the council amended the plan over 120 times. They disagreed with staff 120 times. They can disagree with our recommendations.
Yes, yeah, understood.
Understood.
And I'm telling you, that was a painful process for me. Because we take ownership on our plans, right? So, but it is the reality of how this process works. And I'm gonna have more leather skin when we take the region plans.
You're gonna need it.
You wanna see what
they've
they've
done
done with the paper bag ban bill?
So,
I'm sorry, I'm just stuck on this.
It's okay.
So I understand ultimately the council can do what the council wants to do, okay? And, you know, and that's why you either vote or you vote or not. But if something like this were adopted as part of this, and somebody was coming in for a rezoning that would be inconsistent with this, does it have any influence, notwithstanding the council can do what the council can in the process?
You're saying a comprehensive application for rezoning versus a piecemeal going to the administrative hearing
Yeah, well,
officer?
so I mean, if I have something zoned and I fill all the requirements, I'm assuming I'm gonna be able to work through that. I'm talking about a zoning change. If somebody is coming in from this, if we have this in place, some kind of a village overlay, and somebody's coming in for a zoning change, and it is inconsistent with this, does it matter at all? I mean, does it have any influence? Notwithstanding, I understand the council can do what the council wants to do.
Well, the way you're posing the question, it sounds to me like what you're suggesting is a piecemeal rezoning going into the administrative hearing officer. So our staff does write a staff report that accompanies those.
No, what I'm thinking about is, let's assume
Yeah.
we adopt something here, okay? You have two proposed zoning, comprehensive zoning changes that are in process.
Yes.
Maybe more, you know, by June 1st. Does what we say here somehow influence any of those?
It can.
Okay, that's, I guess that's.
And all these people.
Recognizing the council can do whatever it wants.
You're gonna be reviewing those here though, so you haven't, I mean, it's kind of, it has influence,
Yeah,
but
you're
also you're gonna
recommended
be
on
reviewing
those.
this.
Yeah, so the,
okay, so,
I'm sorry, I'm being a dead horse.
It's okay.
it's complicated, and I appreciate everyone being engaged. And I appreciate everyone's different viewpoint. I still am looking for consensus on the idea of kind of pursuing this, you know, as an idea. Does this make sense for this?
Yeah.
And I just.
You'd be asking us to.
Yeah, thumbs up, who's got
Catherine, you any more?
Consensus, you know, I thought it was a great idea, and I still think more conversation is important. I don't like where the red line is. I understand we can change the red line. So I guess I'm gonna stand my ground.
Okay, great.
Mary?
No, I'm sorry, thumbs up.
Are you thumbs up or not?
Well, I'm most thumbs down, so my question still is, so we're just, again, it's just the concept,
Just the
not the
concept.
outline.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna adjust the outlines as we get more information. And I think we heard some good input today
Yeah.
And of course,
about where that might be. I mean, you know, we aren't there every day, so we don't know where the outline should be, so we can work on that.
Right.
In the definitions, is there any minimum area?
From Plan 2040 now, in terms of a village center.
Does Troy have the,
He's gone.
he's gone up?
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
Christina.
how many do we need to do?
Yeah, how many, I think we may have to.
have a
do
quorum.
this. Yeah, we have a quorum.
Yeah.
All right.
We could have potentially
I understand.
unanimous consent. You're
Might be
right.
the first.
Well, that would be neighborhood. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about whether I have a conflict of interest, and these are just recommendations, and.
I don't believe.
Well, your
I'm
neighbors are
really-
here today and they know that you've taken a hard look at things and listened to them. And I think that should be really respected and commended. I know you've been in a tough position both publicly and behind the scenes, but I really respect you for having the skin to sit through it, 'cause I'm not sure I would have.
Let me be the
It's not
devil's
easy.
advocate.
It's not easy.
Let me be the devil's advocate.
You go ahead and ask them.
You're gonna have that no matter what,
Yeah.
okay, but you vote from your heart, but if you also still say, I'm gonna go, you know.
Well, I guess until tonight, I really did I'm thankful for your questions, Larry, because I think that's been I was operating on the idea that this did offer some framework for zoning decisions in the interim. And if that's not true, then, I do wonder what's the point. But if it does offer a potential guide or framework for future zoning decision, even in the interim, with the planning office, I'm for it, because I think this neighborhood needs protection. And I am looking at it from a conservation preservation.
And a bit of self-direction, they can decide what they think.
And it brings them into it, exactly, or all of us into it, I should
So you
say,
said some good things.
oneness.
The conception, consensus, framework, but we're still gonna keep talking, okay? We're
Yep.
gonna,
I'm with you. I'm
Okay.
with you, Tony.
if you're gonna have
Two
folks-
thumbs up.
Yeah.
So, where are, we? I think we have it.
I think we have
I think
unanimous
so, too.
consensus.
We don't have unanimous.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
right.
waiting for everybody's ideas. We want to
So,
put you on the
yeah.
hot seat.
Yeah, so, no, it's okay. I'm all right with this.
Put that thumb up.
You're all right with it? So I'm going to put my thumb up, but I'm also going to say out loud, if there are wetlands in there, people should probably be looking and protecting the wetlands.
Agreed,
Yeah.
agreed, 100%.
Yeah,
But
there
that's-
it is. The boundaries aren't
Takes
right.
that off of here.
Understood,
Yeah, yeah.
understood. I mean, look, it's his first shot at the line. I mean, if there's natural resources that need to be cut out of it, it's 100%, I don't think anybody here thinks that shouldn't be cut out.
And again, sorry, I have a childcare conflict tonight, so I have to
So,
run. but
so
thank
that
you.
is our
Thank you,
consensus
Anne.
vote, and it seems like we've
It was
arrived.
painful for me, but I'll go with it.
Great. So let the record show
I
there's
also have
unanimous
childcare,
consent.
not the same kid.
Not the
Thank you for your hard work.
Bye.
Maybe telling us the words that you guys just do this, that go in the minutes.
Yeah, because I don't know that I can do it well, so I'm gonna wait till the minutes come out and reflect it in my
Okay.
adjustments.
Okay,
But
all
thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that concludes our discussion on the potential Ridgely Avenue Village Center overlay. I thank everyone for their input and cooperation and civility, and let's go to the next topic. We will come back to this and talk more about this at the next meeting.
Okay, so our next topic, we're gonna talk about the strategy questionnaires that went out, public input on those. So there were 5 strategy questionnaires that the public responded to, land use, transportation, housing, healthy communities, and the economy and natural environment. So overall, there was about 100 to 250 responses per questionnaire. And just to kind of like reflect on like how those went out and how they were voted upon by the public, there were 3 choices that each respondent could choose: agree, no opinion, or disagree. So none of our strategies that we had finalized and came up with had over 50% of the public disagree with them. Which was great. And I wanted to kind of just highlight like the demographics, because there were some demographic questions at the end of this questionnaires that just to say that compared to the average resident of Region 7, the average respondent of the questionnaires were more likely to be over 65, white, and a homeowner versus like the average resident of Region 7. So just to note, and also important to note that the population of like the region itself is over 26,000 people, and there's people who answer the questionnaires in totality for on average, it's about maximum 250 people or so. So, while the questionnaires gave us an overview of the strategies were agreeable with the public, because it's such a small sample versus the overall population, it's equally, if not more important, to look critically at the written comments that could be submitted at the end of each strategy that was proposed that people could make a comment on, in addition to if they agreed, had no opinion or disagree. So we took a critical look at those. And the comments from that open comment section were wide ranging on many of the strategies, pointing to kind of like a need for more context within the actual plan itself. We as a community have been talking about these for months, but the public might not have such of up-to-date kind of knowledge of the different strategies and topics that we have. So it's important that we're going to provide that context for the region plan, the document itself. Many public comments also offered several helpful ideas to strengthen or clarify some of these strategies. And really these were all just wordsmithing and clarity tweaks, nothing larger than that. So to those, we had tweaks to 22 of the strategies to make it more clear based off of the comments that we received. And these revised strategies, like those tweaks, were in the email we sent out last week.
Yeah, if I can pipe up real quick. So I sent you all a spreadsheet that is tracking all of the strategies from the time that we first shared it with you up to a handful of the changes that we have recommended be made to the strategies, and most of those are wordsmithing kinds of strategies based on the comments that we got. So take a look at that spreadsheet if you have not done so already.
So Patrick, the spreadsheet was pretty dynamic.
It's a lot.
Elements, but there were 5 that were highlighted for discussion today. Is that right?
2.
Yeah. And that's what I was gonna kind of just about to get to. So
Thanks. Perfect.
yeah, so there's 2 strategies that we felt that would be key to bring attention.
Let me ask you a question. The demographics are curious. 65 and white.
So it's just talking about the difference.
Family, I guess.
It's talking about like how so the demographics we got at the end of the survey, for example, like the amount of participants who answered the questionnaires who were over 65 for the questionnaires were about 30 to 40% of the people, versus the region itself was only 22%.
Yeah.
So is that consistent or inconsistent with the other regions? Just out of curiosity.
I think it's pretty consistent. Yeah.
Were you able to tell sort of where they live in the region?
No, we didn't get that.
We don't know, they were pretty lumped in Bay Ridge or Heritage Harbor.
Sometimes you can tell by the comments.
Yeah, where they were commenting and such, and where they had a specific focus. But
Zip code.
Zip codes, but they're pretty.
yeah.
Yeah, zip code is hard. It's not terrible, but it is hard.
I mean, mine is the same as the city of Annapolis.
Yeah, so
I'm curious.
I'm going to guess that a lot of it had to do with how we got information out to our property owners associations and our civic associations and community associations, and what that population represents, because those individuals would have received much more information, much more encouragement to go online, as opposed to folks not most. So that's the demographic that you got.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to folks who aren't living in like property owners association and civic associations and some HOAs, but a lot of the HOAs aren't going to be sending out this kind of information. Like, this is important, you got to get involved. Whereas like Annapolis Roads, Bay Ridge, those are more along the lines of property owners associations, and we expect those residents to be more engaged and more involved in what happens in their world. So
As
we're
opposed to the no man's land where there's not really a homeowners association, you'd have to. take
Or
it
people.
upon
pushing-
Right,
or people
homeowners
pushing-
associations aren't gonna send these out. They
Yeah.
just aren't.
No, the management companies are not gonna do.
They
it.
are not gonna send that out now.
So anyway, that's my belief on why that
Sure.
is the way it is. It's very skewed.
What do you want us to decide?
We were gonna highlight, did you finish your?
Yeah, that's all. I was just gonna
We can move on to
continue
the
on.
next
Yep,
slide.
yep, that was it.
Yeah.
So, you want me to cover this? Okay. So there's two strategies that we really wanted to highlight. One of them being a housing strategy and one being a transportation strategy.
Well, I have a question. When you did it, so when I was reading these things, are there definitions in there that we're not seeing, that they saw, that said?
So a lot of, we had links in the survey to certain terms, and there was a glossary as well, but the glossary, not everyone looks at. And then who knows if they click on the link. So there,
I don't think they had a clue what missing middle housing
right,
was.
so we, some people did make comments, what's missing middle, some people, yeah, have
Well,
questions.
my favorite
on what
was
it
the
is.
AARP livable communities, putting all the money into senior center. What? That's
Priorities, we have different priorities.
not what a livable community is, right? Okay.
So this is a pretty
So-
modest change though.
Yeah, so this is the missing middle strategy that we had. There was a lot of concern around that word certain areas, certain neighborhood preservation policy areas. And so people just kind of thought, well, that's too vague. That's too, I don't like that term certain. So I think there was just too much ambiguity in that term, and we recommended tweaking it, really focusing on like the infrastructure availability component of where this missing middle housing would be appropriate. And also and then taking up that reference to neighborhood preservation areas, because there's maybe more areas that it's applicable to. And then Christina has on, but she was gonna talk about the, just knowing that this is gonna need some sort of legislative fix to be implemented. And that is in the works right now. We think that this strategy, leaving it in this revised strategy form, kind of leaves it at a place where it's, the legislation will fix it, but this isn't, it's not too broad, it's not too
And
narrow.
there is some interest, I think, on council to address this. It would take some time to do so, but this would support that.
This aligns with that kind of approach to making those changes. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So I like everything about this revision except the fact that it just limits it to duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. And I think missing middle is more encompassing than that. So if it's in requirements allowing multiple family houses such as, or something, so that it's not quite as limited. Because one of the ways to do missing middle is to have several small dwellings on one piece of property. So those are single family, but they're on one property. So that would not be included in this.
It's kind of ADU, but.
Yeah, okay, so.
So adding, like, maybe at the word allowance, after allowances, is there a way to add another,
Could it just be
additional
general?
dwelling unit?
Multifamily, if you want to go.
Yeah.
That's scary.
That's scary.
Multifamily.
But I heard you saying we're small and single family.
Yeah, single.
More
family,
than
not
more than
multifamily,
one
right.
single family on a,
Right.
That's always a problem though. Two.
that's not multifamily.
2 and 3. Yeah, that.
Might
It's
be a problem in your book, but in the trainings I've had, they have a design aid for multiple
Should
little
we just
houses.
say
Yeah.
multiple units in additional zoning categories?
Units might be good.
Yeah, just don't make them attached, right? I mean, they could be attached, which is how you defined it there, right? Those duplexes, triplexes,
Right,
they're all attached, we're just saying multiple units.
multiple units.
Allowance
Yeah,
for,
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, they're not very greedy.
I think you wanted to keep those others too, didn't
Do you
you?
want to keep the others?
I think
such
so,
as-
yeah,
Including.
including, and then list them all.
Give an example.
Well. no,
Yeah,
including
otherwise multiple
yeah,
units can be
including just
interpreted.
before multiple. You wanna include
Large
multiple
are
units. Cause now you're still making it look like multiple units is duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes.
Yeah, I thought you had it right. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I don't get too many screens here.
Go back to your.
Okay, so move including
Or
before
just take
multiple.
out including allowances for multiple units, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, which kind of.
There you go.
leave it
That's
open.
exactly what I was.
There you go.
That's perfect.
All in the
If
same
you had
place.
quadplexes, you put that back in.
And triplexes?
Yeah. No, and quadplexes.
Oh, right.
Don't worry about it.
And complex.
Et cetera.
I don't know what a quadplex is.
Four houses together.
Four.
I mean, I knew quad was four, but. four
No, it's a
houses-
house with 4 units.
You're an expert.
Oh, yeah, I know, I'm supposed to be early 20th century
Those are all-
apartments, I guess.
They're all connected and attached to one,
Brownstones.
one way or the other, either horizontal or vertical.
Quadplex,
And sometimes they're stacked.
I guess, yeah. we
Okay.
can-
That's why,
So-
that's why separate units do it.
Does this address the concerns of the committee general and is it a worthwhile adjustment? Who
I
agrees
guess the
with me
question
that
I
it
have
is?
is, do we wanna, I mean, the fact that I'm happy we took out R2 and R5, but it sounds like they could still come into R2 and R5. Or do you put a parameter that says, I mean, it does say where, I'm just tossing it around.
It's kind of open-ended and,
Yeah.
and it would be something defined during the legislative process during which you should engage and make your voice heard. But that's when the rubber would hit the road in terms of where. and what
Unless you put
conditions.
language that in, it says appropriate, where was it that I read that? There's something about consider changes. to services.
I'm not sure I understand why they wanted R2 and R5 out. Andrew, can you tell me
I'm
why?
glad you have that out.
Yeah, I think that was just limiting it to too much
Oh,
to, I mean, it
so it
could.
could be in other areas as well.
Yeah, 'cause it would
Right.
seem like if we just did it for those, only those two.
Yeah. I
Most
see.
of it
So
could be other.
just broaden where this could potentially happen. I
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
And sort of leave it up to the legislation to
You
determine
kept
that.
the language about in alignment with the built environment. Is that in that lower section? Where did it go?
In a manner that enhances the built environment. of these
Enhances the
areas
built environment.
And considers infrastructure availability.
Okay.
So infrastructure
So it's not
availability
consistent.
could be like close to transit,
Yeah, or having sewer.
public sewer.
Yeah, and enhancing the built environment, if there were areas that would be sensed, they presumably be sensed. Okay with it.
So are we at a place where we can say that this is agreeable to everybody here? Thumbs up. There we go. Okay.
That was too easy. I think we.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Easy would have been an hour.
All right, here we go. Is this the last one?
This was another one.
Get to be horses to the barn.
No, we got more.
Yeah.
This is potentially the last one, hopefully the last one. The original strategy that you see there, this was dealing with coordination between the city of Annapolis and the county. And this got wide agreement, but what came out in some subsequent conversations, the comments were supportive of the strategy, but there was one comment that asked about making this coordination a requirement. It was kind of a similar thought to something that staff had been talking about. We are recommending to kind of strengthen this by splitting this into two separate strategies. The first strategy would really focus on coordination in terms of current planning and making sure that we're coordinated in terms of the development proposals that are coming in, on an annual basis. And then the second strategy would focus more on the long range planning and coordination in that regard, both in land use planning, transportation and other infrastructure planning. So, and having a mechanism to really formalize that between the two jurisdictions. So we think that this is this strengthens. But it was kind of a significant change.
Yeah, well, as much as it pains me to see another moment of our meetings focused on Forest Drive, it is probably a worthwhile change.
And yeah. Do you feel like this is worthwhile?
It is a little bit of the ghost. It's well worded, and I think it's appropriate to kind of drill down on it a little bit as has been done in the revised strategies. So what does everyone else do?
Does this help you?
Yes.
This is good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to provide.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. it does.
Number two is sort of like
Not for us
apple
giving
pie.
recommendations. The second
Well,
one.
the original strategy is like that.
There are,
Yeah.
yeah, there
It
are
is.
quarterly meetings now.
It's even worse apple pie.
It's formalizing something.
Well, you don't have agreement with anybody else.
Say that again?
You don't have, it's implementing quarterly agency meetings. It doesn't say that the city or the state will agree to that. Quarterly. meeting.
We ran this by, well, the city's on board.
They are.
That's the big one.
We know that.
That's the big one.
That's the
really.
big one. It's- I mean, that's the other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I mean, they're definitely on board to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we run this by Eric Olshinsky. Yes.
Yeah.
So we good?
I think we should, I think it looks pretty good to me. Who thinks it looks okay?
I wish it was a tiny bit more actionable, but.
What's
I wish it
lacking? I
was
mean, we, in the first one, we're asking for a memorandum of understanding that does not exist currently. And
First one,
that's-
that's fine, yeah. The second one is maintain and strengthen coordination, just.
I like require. I know we're not gonna get that. I'm just being facetious, but.
I mean, could you
I mean, I'm
create a
fine with that.
mechanism too in front of it?
I mean, I can tell you strengthen is not an actionable word.
I think the reason, I mean, I'm fine with changing that too. I think the reason that there are a lot of comments that, well, there's no coordination between the county and the city. Well, there is.
So let me ask a question this way. For purposes number two, from your guys' point of view, what are the good outcomes there? What would be a good outcome?
I'm focused on the quarterly agency meetings that require, talking, across the jurisdictional boundary on an ongoing basis and making sure that we're aligned in our long range, all of those areas of planning, long range land use planning and transportation.
So what is that with your action? Implement quarterly agency meetings to maintain and strengthen coordination between the city and Arundel, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you're starting out with your action.
Well,
Okay, so basically move this, implement agency quarterly or
the last,
meetings. Put that first.
in the front, well, before you change it, but I have another potential. How about create a mechanism to, in the beginning, you said, create a mechanism to ensure strengthened coordination that would lead to those other things, because you're, probably going to ensure a quarterly meeting, you can demand it, but people don't do them. I mean, what I'm saying is you want to create a mechanism that helps them do it. That requires them to do it.
An accountability factor.
Yeah, like create a mechanism that requires strengthened coordination.
But I will say that being from different jurisdictions, it's gonna be hard to use or require when you have a different, every 4 years, you're gonna have a different leadership. Because city and county don't always work very well.
You could always make it part of the legislation that says you have to have a
Well,
meeting every
and the
quarter.
legislation is a different story.
So maybe I should show
Where does
up.
that come from?
What's that?
You have to show up.
Yeah, well, it turns out you don't always have to, I guess.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this more as staff level, not, I don't see our councils necessarily sitting down on a quarterly.
I was still talking staff as well.
Yeah.
But I like Leo's recommendation that that's even stronger.
So
than
create a
mine.
mechanism to maintain and strengthen coordination
I think Leo said require.
to
create a mechanism that requires.
Okay.
Requires coordination.
Is it mechanism or process?
Well, mechanism,
And process.
one mechanism could be legislation, right? That's not a
So how about a
process.
mechanism and a process?
Create a mechanism.
Mechanism and
Processes.
process.
It could be processes, yeah,
And or process.
or plural, yeah.
Process.
I would say a process is a mechanism, but I can understand wanting it in there as well. Mechanism and process, that sounds.
And a process.
Well, only one.
Well,
There might
process
be
could
multiple processes.
But it can be. One process can be multiple.
Process could be many steps.
Yeah.
And many things. I
I
don't mind.
A process, a process.
I think a process is probably better instead of saying it's just one.
Plural.
Yeah,
Just put E.
Implies either is appropriate.
you can suggest more.
It's fine.
I was really like that.
I like it.
It's my birthday, I gotta get home.
Okay, do we have consensus on this?
Yeah, isn't it?
Consensus? Do we have consensus?
Some,
There we go. Okay, there's our two open strategies we've been taking care of. And do we have any others that we wanted to hit before we close that out? Those
I
were
think that
those.
was, I mean, that was our fun. So hopefully you all looked at the spreadsheet and,
Yeah, I pulled it up.
and the other.
No, seriously, I looked at it earlier
Strategies,
today.
and if-
That's why I was amazed
I
by
read
it.
all the
Talk about that
answers
next
to
time.
all
Or is that
the-
really? We can still
I mean,
comment next
I think
time
if you all
on
are
some of those.
comfortable,
I
then
haven't had a
those will
chance to
go
really
into the
review all
draft
of it.
plan and be put out for public review, and we'll get comments
It was really just words.
within the context of the
Yeah,
full
I wouldn't
plan.
worry too much.
Those were the
It's not-
two.
Yeah, and there's a PDF of the summary of all
Yeah.
the comments that said the statistics and that gave a summary of all the comments, but the strategies that changed are in the spreadsheet.
They're green.
Yeah,
The green are the ones that we've talked about today.
Yeah,
If there's
The
a,
Changes are over on the other side.
yeah, in the far right column, there will be text there if there was a change. If there's no text, there was no change.
and there's like another column that says like if there was a change, yes or no, and you'll see,
thank you.
just to reinforce.
So like transportation had one that was changed.
Yeah, and then again, those are just like, wordsmithing, minor tweaks. These are the two ones we wanted to bring up that were, we felt that were bigger.
I would suggest that we say we're willing to accept the adjusted final draft guidance as proposed by staff and voted on this evening.
You still report, right?
Yes. That we accept the proposed changes to the strategies that were either put in place by staff or adjusted for the meeting this evening.
So this is a blanket.
Yeah, that's all the changes that we made. There we go. So we have unanimous consent on all of this. All the votes we have this evening. Wow, that's remarkable. We only have 3, but that's a lot. For this.
They were big.
Yeah, they're big,
They were big.
they're big votes.
Can we, let's finish. Absolutely. Can I move forward real quick?
Yes, sir.
I already mentioned the first bullet. I wanted to run over a potential, schedule to wrap up the work of this committee. We had put out, back in December, I think, a couple of tentative dates that those need to be deleted. Those, what I would like to,
Can you tell us what they are?
yeah, they were June 21st and August 24th. And working on our timeline right now and balancing with the other regions, that those dates don't work. I would like to propose these 3 dates as our target dates for a meeting. Leo noticed the last one is different than what I emailed you previously. I think I said September 7th, and that's not gonna work.
14.
Similar timeframe.
Yeah. No, I can't make it out.
The 13th, we could change.
I'll be out
Could
for
shoot
13.
it virtual.
I'll be away on the 14th.
The
Okay.
13th, we were thinking of making virtual, right?
Yes,
So we could
Oh, I didn't put that
potentially
on there,
change
yeah.
that time to daytime if that works better. I don't know if you want to open that can of worms, but.
Why don't you put a doodle poll? These are way out in the future. Why don't you put a doodle?
June 13th is not.
No,
Oh,
June
believe me,
13th is
it's so
not.
much better to have these on our calendar now. It's easier to change it later.
We've never had
We've had-
a time that works for everybody on the committee, never.
Yeah,
Not
that
once.
poll is like a quick way to get to know.
Mhm.
No one can do the meeting, it's all.
Why are we trying to?
Tipping out everything. People who are here.
Yeah.
It's like, we're all here.
So you could do you're saying the final SAC would be virtual meeting? Is that what
Just
I
the
heard?
13th.
No, just the 13th.
The next.
Well,
the next one.
we have
Yeah,
some,
just so-
we have some thoughts that virtual is not ideal for.
For some of these meetings. Now, the one on the 13th, we thought was gonna be fine for virtual, right?
We just don't do that well, Bert.
I
No, we
think
don't.
not. I
We
think
don't
you're
do well
right.
together either.
We've been doing great together. Maybe we could try to
I'm
change
just
our
kidding, I'm
attitude.
just kidding. Little left to get to the late hour.
Not from you.
But
Well, I mean, that week, I guess, is the goal, right? If the 13th is bad.
we can work on a better time, because I think the two of you could not.
I'll be on a plane, so it'd
On the
be even
13th.
harder to do
Which
virtual
one?
at night. I'm going to
Are you
France.
guys back to
Leave at
France?
6, yeah.
The September one, is that what he's talking about?
That's life.
Yeah, it's a pretty long flight, but yeah.
So we can try to find a different date for the Thursday.
That'd be good. I have an HPC hearing.
And that's what I was gonna request, a different date for the final one, and that's could it go later? Could it be the 1st of October instead of?
No.
No,
We need to be done.
August.
Yeah.
Well, let's make
Two
it.
weeks later, it's really, isn't that hard?
Yes.
I would like to suggest that the final meeting be a date when everybody.
That's what I was hoping, yeah.
We can probably make that work. Let's focus tonight on, getting an adjustment to the 13th and the 11th. Is there a problem with July 11th for anyone?
And maybe on the road, but we'll see. And for the final meeting, you bring in really nice food and food.
Bring our own bottle.
Yeah.
A big one.
So the 14th is no problem. June 13th is okay, July 11th is okay.
June 13th is not,
Okay.
that's the one that's tricky. Because we know two people who can't. do it.
It was virtual, I do it in the morning, but I won't even have.
The
my
12th
Well, you could always
or-
join, we could do hybrid and we'll fit join virtually if you can't do that.
Get an airplane.
Yeah, it'll be a little difficult.
Yeah.
Take that.
Transatlantic. Cool.
Can we just move it to the 14th for the?
Is that better?
Which date?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
GAB may be repeating this room, so we have to find a different room, which is fine.
I can't do Wednesdays.
I mean, even,
The 14th, I can't be here.
The 15th, Thursday.
I could be here, oh, no, I'm hosting a big group at my office.
we could do the 20th, which
I
is
could
the
do-
following week.
Yeah.
Does that still work with the timelines?
The 20th works for me.
So we're planning on putting out
I can't do the 20th.
preliminary draft on the report. So
Of July.
What about Monday, the 12th?
July.
Yeah,
Anybody do
but
that?
we need the zoning changes for the,
I could do the
what
12th.
was,
You need the zoning
Yeah.
changes for that.
Well,
Yes.
somebody eat.
Yeah.
If we do it in the evening, I could do the 12th.
I can.
Why don't we try that?
Let's do that.
Okay, that way we won't slip too far in the schedule. Push
There's a
ourselves
region
in
board
October.
meeting that night, but
Which meeting?
Monday, June 12th.
So are you thinking the 12th is a mandatory?
Here's the problem with June 12th. If Region 4, they have loads of rezonings to go through. They're considering meeting here because they need access to a room later. The libraries kick you out at like 8:30. So that's a potential problem. We might have to maybe have one of the meetings in the Independence Room.
Well, that's not.
Or Wellesley can host you.
But then I can't be.
You gotta run between the two.
That might be a good thing for you.
You know, I don't know, yeah, y'all could come to us. I don't know, are there overlaps in staff? I mean, in attendance?
There's really only one deputy.
Which committee do you care most about?
Let me tell you something, I live in this region.
And then there's your answer.
There you go.
Your answer.
There we go.
Well, let's see if we can make that work, Patrick, see if you guys can put that together, and we'll say that's our tentative date, and we'll see if, see how that works
Maybe
out.
we just put Region 4 down at the Independence Room if we can, because you guys normally meet here anyway.
Yeah, this is our.
We'll figure it out.
That's right.
I like that. Let's vote on it.
Where does? They're downstairs.
They need the libraries in the region, but the libraries, you know, they have you out of there by like 8:30, and they've got so much to talk about. We think the meetings may go a little longer. We need some options.
Just tell them there's a lot of traffic and parole, so they're.
They got down here too. They got plenty of traffic of their own.
And were we gonna stick with July 11th and September? No, there were some problems in September.
No, yeah, December was good. July was good, right, everybody?
So June 12th, July 11th was still good, and September 14th was problematic, so we're gonna look for other dates there, but we're not gonna worry about that tonight.
That's well.
Fair.
Yeah, I may be traveling, but I'll deal with it.
Okay, the debit looks good, that's right.
Is that all right? I think we covered a lot of ground. And thanks to everyone for sticking with it. It was not easy.
This gentleman has his hand up, Leo.
May I ask for 60 seconds?
Sure.
You
For
can have
point of clarification,
Yes.
because I'm fairly new to the process. First of all, I respect you all and I appreciate the work that you do. It's not easy. I'm just concerned, I'm not 100% comfortable with the unanimous vote. Back to Ridgely, I apologize, but it is. Clearly Lily was not on board and she had to leave. So did she not leave behind a vote, or I'm not 100% comfortable with going down as a unanimous vote.
Well, if you're here, you vote. If you're not here, you don't vote. And
That's why I'm
unanimous
asking
consent,
procedure.
unanimous consent is the voters in the room that was unanimous. Now, a motion passes if it's not unanimous.
Right.
So it's just recorded differently. In this case, it's going to be recorded as unanimous consent because that was available to us at that time.
Right.
So,
And she opted to leave. So if somebody, if we have a scheduled meeting and somebody has to
I'm
leave.
just asking for
Yeah.
procedure.
And it's a recommendation. It's a
I understand.
recommendation. It's not anything
Appreciate it.
final.
but that's
Just a question.
that procedurally, that's how it's handled. Oh, all right. Thank you.
I think our charter is online.
The charter is online.
Yeah, you can read exactly how the vote goes.
No, I know that. I just,
67.
you made a statement that every decision tonight was unanimous, and I just,
Which it was.
it was. Technically, it was really.
No, factually. With
Actually.
that, I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah.
With that, I'm gonna close the meeting unless there's anything else from the group. Thanks again. We're adjourned.
Good job tonight for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good job.
Thank you all for your time.
Getting your